In Mel Kiper's latest mock draft for 2025, he has the Pittsburgh Steelers taking Emeka Egbuka, and I love the pick, just because he catches the football, not because he scores touchdowns, not because he can run well after the catch, not because of his great personality and his team-first concept. I love this pick because Mel Kiper has labeled him the best blocker in the draft, the best wide receiver blocker in the entire draft. See, everybody blames Najee Harris for not having long runs down the field, and I'd like to blame George Pickens and the rest of the receiving corps because they don't like to block and be physical on the perimeter, so it's hard to have long runs. Remember Hines Ward? He wasn't just a great pass catcher. He put fear in defenses that they were going to get their heads taken off, which allowed Jerome Bettis, not a particularly fast running back, to break off long touchdown runs. And that's what Emeka Egbuka does for your team, for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is what Mel Kiper had to say. I think he's the best run-blocking receiver in this class. He's great on slant routes. He's great as a punt returner. Miller said about Kiper's pick of Emeka Egbuka for the Steelers, he's going to give you some of that professionalism that has been lacking at the wide receiver position in Pittsburgh, probably since Mike Tomlin took the job. So it's absolutely a need for them to get someone in there who just has that work ethic, who's just going to show up and do the job. Who's just going to show up? Who's he referring to? George Pickens. And who does Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin, what does it seem like? What's the perception right now? Who do they want to give a long-term deal to and big money to? George Pickens. Do you know what the most important quality for any athlete is? The most important. Availability. Availability mentally and physically. And George Pickens doesn't offer both. He's not at practice. He comes late, doesn't show up, shows up late to the game, and then when he's at the game, mentally, he's somewhere else, hurting the team with all his stupid antics. I don't want Emeka Egbuka. A lot of Steelers in the organization will say, all we have to do is bring in another professional receiver, and that'll rub off on George the right way. This is a lot of what the Pittsburgh media says too. Have you guys been paying attention at all? It doesn't. Jesus himself could sit next to George Pickens, and I don't think he'd behave well. I really don't. At all. You think another mortal human being, another wide receiver, is going to make George Pickens act right? I think it's going to make him act worse. I think he's going to be jealous. I think if you have another star on the team, a wide receiver, and George Pickens is in the room, and the fans love that receiver more than George Pickens has no self-reflection. He's not going to go home and say to himself, well, it's me. Maybe I need to change my behavior. Maybe I need to work harder. Maybe I need to shut up and do my job. He's not going to look at it like that. He's going to blame everybody else, including that receiver. F Pittsburgh, F the fans, F him, after they just handed the guy $100 million. I always say this about George Pickens. This is why I can't stand him. This is why I can't stand him or his dad. The entire city of Pittsburgh wants George to be successful. Every fan on the planet wants George to be successful. His teammates, the organization, the Rooneys, the coaching staff, even me at one time, I wanted him to be successful. It's not like he's going to a job where he's being mistreated. They want the best for him. They're offering him millions of dollars to work there. And it's not good enough for George. It's not good enough for his dad. Let him walk. Let him go. You know why George Pickens all of a sudden is saying all the right things and doing all the right things? And Omar Khan says that he had a great meeting with George. He just wants to be great. You know, the same guy that doesn't show up for practice, shows up late for games, does stupid gestures and costs his team 15 yards. That same guy that wants to be great. You know why he's saying all the right things? He has millions of reasons to say the right things. And it's not only that. You don't think that he's having discussions with his agent, and his agent behind the scenes is like, hey, George, there's not too much interest out here for you. There might be one other team, two other teams, tops, but they're not offering what we think the Steelers are going to offer. They're not completely sold on you. They want to give you like a 2-year deal, cheaper, and then if you behave yourself, they're saying that they'll reward you. The Steelers, it doesn't seem they're going to put him through that process. He's already had 3 years as a Steeler to do the process, and the Steelers still want to give him big money. That's another reason why Mike Tomlin was voted the best coach in the league by all the players, because you don't have to do your job. You don't have to show up for work. You could do whatever you want, and Mike Tomlin will play you, pay you, and hand you participation trophies like he did with George Pickens against the Buffalo Bills. That's why the players love him. They're not playing for Bill Parcells. They're not playing for Bill Belichick. They're not playing for Bill Cowher. You think that those coaches would have put up with his garbage? Not in a million years. Never. Wouldn't last 4 years. I know that for sure. There wouldn't be a question if he's getting big money. You'll say, especially the comment section, you say this all the time. What, you think things are so simple? What's your answer? My answer is DK Metcalf, along with Emeka Egbuka. Could you imagine that train coming at you, both of them, both guys that love to be physical, block. It's about the team first. Picture them on the perimeter going downfield to pick off defenders on a long run, crushing guys. That's what the AFC is about. That's what the Steelers are about. They're not about George Pickens, an emotional, frail train wreck who's not a physical, he walks off the field when it's time to block or during an interception. I'm so tired of I don't even want to hear his name anymore. I don't. All I want to hear is that I want to wake up in the morning and see breaking news that George Pickens has been traded to another team. Send him to the Seahawks for DK Metcalf, a 3rd-round pick, a 4th-round pick, along with it. Send DK Metcalf over our way and let him be the Derrick Henry of the AFC North at the wide receiver position. Emeka Egbuka did not produce an eye-popping level in college during his senior season. He caught 81 passes for 1,011 yards and 10 touchdowns. Seems like a great season to me. He also went 74-1, 151-10 in 2022. So he can produce, but these are not necessarily first-round numbers. His former Ohio State teammate, Marvin Harrison Jr., for example, caught 144 passes for 2,474 yards and 28 touchdowns over his last 2 seasons in Columbus. Does Marvin Harrison block like Emeka Egbuka? I doubt it. So when you put the team first and you're willing to help the team, they'll throw the ball to somebody else and have you block on the perimeter because they know you're not going to complain. He had great numbers in college. Hines Ward didn't have eye-popping numbers in college. Far from it, especially as a receiver. Louis Lips didn't have eye-popping numbers in college. He didn't even think he was going to be drafted. If you look at his numbers, nothing spectacular. One of the best wide receivers that the Pittsburgh Steelers have ever had. Unselfish, Louis Lips. I'll do it all. I'll do everything. I'll put the team first. I'll return punts. I'll return kickoffs. Does it sound familiar? Same personality traits? I think so. Emeka Egbuka is Hines Ward and Louis Lips rolled into one. Beanie Bishop says everybody was pissed. Steelers' late collapse, not what anybody expected. I don't know, Beanie. Sometimes players' view of reality gets jaded because they have so much confidence in their ability that they could change anything. And I love that attitude. I agree with it. But it's, if your quarterback is playing that bad, where Russell Wilson's only getting a first down in the 3rd quarter, and leading up to the playoff game, it's been reported by, I think, Jill Pryor, how bad Russell Wilson was practicing and the organization knew they were in trouble. I think if you put that competitive edge, gave it a timeout, and really looked at it from the outside looking in, I knew you were in trouble. I knew you were in trouble the day that Russell Wilson beat the Jets and everybody lost their mind and racist Ryan Clark said that the Pittsburgh Steelers are Super Bowl bound. Yeah. I guess you haven't been paying attention to Russell Wilson's career since he's gotten old. He's going to give you glimpses every now and then. His legs were going to give out. His arm was going to give out. As the season progressed, you saw it. And that's exactly... I made a video saying, don't believe the Russell Wilson hype. I explained exactly what's going to happen and exactly what I said. That's exactly what happened. So, Beanie, I get it from your perspective. Everybody was pissed. Bishop said of the Steelers' reaction to the end of the season on Big C's NFL Preview podcast. Obviously, knowing that we were 10-3, and then we went on a losing streak like that. That's not what anybody expected. But then the Steelers were playing Cameron Sutton over Bishop, the former, after returning from suspension. Perhaps by coincidence, a flurry of communication issues crept into the defense as Sutton's snap count rose. Bishop hardly had a perfect rookie year, but he was on an upward trajectory, and as you might expect, he had certain feelings about his benching. Beanie Bishop also went on to say they were reeling by the end of the year, and it felt like there was no way to stop it. Granted, they had a rough go of it, playing some of the best teams in the league. They had some injuries to deal with, playing largely on the road and on short weeks at times. None of these things excuse what happened, though. I just feel that the guys tried to do whatever they could. Bishop said of the Steelers' collapse. Obviously, there's going to be changes made over the offseason and things like that to see what the problems were. I feel like next year it's going to be a lot better with those problems that we had. We had a chance to see what those things were over the offseason and see about how to fix those things. Cam Sutton, the entire year, did whatever he wanted to do. Certain coverages were called. He's blitzing when he's not supposed to. Other times he's called to blitz. He drops back in coverage. Cam Sutton was a complete disaster. Disaster. Why Beanie Bishop wasn't playing, I have no idea. He didn't play because a couple receivers caught passes on him. They catch passes on everybody. At least he was in the spots where he's supposed to be. He picked off the ball 4 times. Everybody got on him at the Cowboys game. I was at the Cowboys game. He's running stride for stride with the running back and the receivers, and they caught the ball. He wasn't outmanned or outgunned or outsized or none of that. He's a rookie. He played very well. It's just amazing to me. I like every week Cam Sutton just doing whatever he wanted. Let's talk about his personal. You signed a guy that just got done beating up his wife. Came in after a 4-game suspension. Tomlin puts him right on the field. And all of a sudden, there's nothing but communication problems on the defense. You got one bad apple on defense, Cam Sutton messing it up. You got one bad apple on offense, George Pickens. And Mike Tomlin is in love with these guys. And you wonder why. Forget the quarterback position. Nothing but turmoil and disorganization and a bunch of garbage. That's what it is. Dulac reported that Steelers were completely comfortable playing Troy Fautanu at guard last season. Oh, my God. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers, let's put this in perspective. If you knew you were going to play him at guard or you had no problem to play him at guard, why would you take him in the first round of the draft? If you take an offensive lineman in the first round of the draft, he better be an offensive tackle or he better be a center. One or the other. A guard, they were perfectly okay with him playing. I wouldn't be okay with it. Wow. I will tell you, when they drafted him last year, they thought if they had to, they would play him at guard if they were going to leave Broderick Jones at right tackle and Dan Moore at left. Dulac said recently on Steelers Nation Radio, they were completely comfortable with that idea when they drafted him, that he was totally capable of being that guard. That's an interesting tidbit from Dulac going into the draft. There was a lot of speculation about where Fautanu would play in the NFL. Although he's most likely a tackle in college, he did get some work at guard, and his profile seemed to indicate that he might be better off at guard in the NFL. I really got a problem with this. After drafting him, the Steelers started him at tackle. Throughout the offseason, he got to work on the left and right side. Eventually, he started to rotate more with Jones at right tackle. It sounded like he impressed them. He impressed the team at that position. That's probably why Fautanu stuck at offensive tackle during his short work last year. The Steelers were impressed with his abilities there, not seeing a reason to bump him inside. He was about to take Jones' job, but then a dislocated kneecap took him out for the year. I don't know what to make of this. If you take an offensive tackle, and I'm not saying it because he's Samoan and so is Beanie Sewell, but if you take a tackle in the first round, he better be at tackle. You better put him exactly where he played in college. I just don't understand what's going on with the Steelers. There's just so much confusion and uncertainty. It's just ridiculous. So you draft the guy, you bring him in, he's your first round draft pick, offensive tackle, and you move him to guard. It's just, a lot of people will say, what's the big deal? You need to be multi-skilled and no, you don't. As a first round draft pick, high pick, I don't believe that. I believe you draft that guy, he goes right into the position that you drafted him for. They did this to Minkah Fitzpatrick in Miami. Brian Flores, they drafted him, number 11th or 17th overall. He comes to the team. They tell him they want him to gain 15 pounds to play outside linebacker, put him near the line of scrimmage, put on weight, do this, do that. He's your first round pick. He's a free safety. He's not an outside linebacker. If you wanted to use your first round pick on an outside linebacker, you should have drafted one. It's just ridiculous. Can you imagine Minkah Fitzpatrick, instead of playing at 205, he's running around at 220? That's what Brian Flores wanted him to do. That's why he was traded to the Steelers. He got Minkah Fitzpatrick, a guy that never complains. Within 6 weeks of being drafted by Brian Flores, he wanted out of there. I'm not a fan of Brian Flores at all. If you watch him coach the team, it's all about him. He wants you to know his tough upbringing constantly. What does that got to do with X's and O's? Nobody cares. Nobody wants to hear it. Your players want to be coached. They don't want to hear your tough luck story. I'm not a fan of his at all. I love what he did to Minkah because it made him a Steeler, but I can't stand him at the same time what he did to Minkah the person and Minkah the player. It's garbage. And what do we have here? It's like now we're doing it as Steelers. Our first round pick, we draft him to play tackle, and we're completely okay if he plays guard. What the F are you talking about? Really? Enough is enough already. Can we make sound decisions? It's not like if you take a player in the second round, third round, fourth round, and you say, all right, let's move him around a little bit. Let's try to get him on the field somehow. You take your first round draft pick and you put him in a different position that he was drafted to play. I don't want to hear it's not a big deal. It's idiocy. If you wanted to draft a guard, you should have waited to the fourth round and drafted him. ESPN analyst predicts Sam Darnold will be the Steelers' 2025 starting quarterback, and nothing would make me happier. Oh my God. Keeping Fields is a possibility, but if the Steelers really liked him, why did they continue to play Russell Wilson over him? And though I have some healthy skepticism of how Darnold will fare without Kevin O'Connell and Justin Jefferson, he's arguably the best free agent quarterback available. Walder writes, the Steelers land him because they have the most to offer, a potentially very good defense, winning history under Mike Tomlin, and the lack of top pick making them less likely to take a first-round rookie. I mean, I've been stating my case from the beginning that it should be Sam Darnold. And if they can't get Sam Darnold and Justin Fields walks, then it's got to be Matthew Stafford. And that's the only chance you have of going deep into the playoffs and possibly getting a Super Bowl. Because Justin Fields will be a work in progress. Now, he was blossoming last year, but all the progress he made was lost because you benched him. Prior to that, 4 coordinators in 4 years. He's in essence, a rookie. You know how much further along the organization would be in the Steelers if they let Justin Fields play out all last year? You would have went into this year knowing exactly what you needed and if he was the answer. But no, we went with a guy that we definitely knew wasn't the answer. If you're paying attention, That's who Mike Tomlin. It's like Mike Tomlin. Oh, who cares? I just set the organization back another year. No big deal. It's only been 4 or 5. Kenny Pickett, 3 years of him. 1 year of Russell Wilson. Next year it'll be 1 year of Justin Fields. Oh, we didn't get it right. No, we're just 10 years of not getting it right. No big deal. No sense of urgency whatsoever. These decisions have to be made hastily. Okay, you can't sign Justin Fields, and Sam Darnold doesn't want to come. You call Matt Stafford on the phone, and you're like, listen, we need you here. What do you want? What is it going to take for us to get you here? Because that's the only way you'll be able to get to the Super Bowl. With anybody else, the season is over before it started, just like it was with Russell Wilson. It's also being reported that Najee's I'm going to end it on a positive note. It's also being reported that Najee's representatives at the combine have met with Mike Tomlin and the Steelers. Listen, I'm all about bringing back Najee. I did a video. I showed the stats. Don't look at it as games. Well, how many games did Jerome Bettis play to Najee Harris? Because obviously it's not fair now. Najee gets an extra game. Look at it with carries. When Najee Harris had carries in the 200s and Bettis had carries in the 200s, Najee Harris had better numbers for that season. The only time that Jerome Bettis outperformed Najee with yardage was when he got carries in the 300s. He'd get almost like an extra 200 to 400 yards. Najee Harris has never once had in a season carries that went into the 300s ever. So when you just look at it from a carries perspective and an average attempt, Najee Harris has the better numbers. And here's another thing. Who played with a better team? It's not even close. It's a stupid question. Jerome Bettis, Big Ben, Hall of Fame offensive line, Hines Ward blocking on the perimeter, Plaxico, perimeter. Guys that were willing to mix it up. Who does Najee Harris have? George Pickens the clown. That's who he has. No quarterback. The defense is not afraid of the quarterback at all. It makes Najee's job so much harder. Najee Harris has never missed a football game in 4 years. Super productive, super tough, super durable, team first guy, great attitude. I love it that Mike Tomlin wants him to stay.